Okay, good morning and namaste to all of you. Let's do the prayers first. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Bhavaswaha, Tatsavitra Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Naha Prachodayat, Asto Ma Sadgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, Mrityurma Amritam Gamya. Om Senavavatu Senabhunaktu Saviryam Karvavahe Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidveshavahe. Om Shanti 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 Om. Let's open Uddhava Gita books. And we are starting a new chapter today, chapter number 15. And the title of this chapter is Explanation of the Vedic Veda. So let's look at the summary, which is given in this book on page number 451. Some people are unfit for practicing any of the three forms of yoga, Karam, Gyan, and Bhakti. Such persons are inimical to Lord Krishna, attached to sense gratification, and are only interested in performing fruitive activities so that they can fulfill their material desires. This chapter describes their faults in terms of place, time, substance, and beneficiary of actions. Those who are perfect in knowledge and devotion to the Lord have no material good qualities or faults. However, for one who is acting on the platform of karma in the hopes of transcending material existence, the execution of his prescribed duties is good, and the failure to do so is evil. These activities that counteract sinful reactions are also considered to be good. When one is endeavoring to remain fixed in the mode of goodness, the cultivation of knowledge is always helpful. When one is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, the 9 practices, beginning with hearing and chanting, are most beneficial. Everything that is detrimental to one's advancement in spiritual life should be avoided. However, for those who are simply interested in engaging in fruitive work with the aim of gratifying the senses, there are innumerable considerations of what is good and what is pious and what is sinful, what is purifying and what is contaminating. All of these must be carefully considered in terms of time, place, circumstances, and the performer of the work. Factually, virtue and fault are not absolute, but are relative to one's particular platform of advancement. Remaining fixed in the discrimination that is suitable to one's level of advancement is good, and anything contrary to that is bad. This is the basic understanding of virtue and fault. Even among objects belonging to the same category, there are different considerations of their purity or impurity in relation to performance of religious duties, worldly transactions, and the maintenance of one's life. These distinctions are described in various scriptures. In the Varnashram society, there are very clear injunctions designating what is pure and what is contaminating. With regards to place, it is said that the presence of black deer is auspicious. Actions must be performed after considering the time as well. Purity and impurity with regards to substances is exemplified by bathing, giving in charity, and performing austerities. The mind can always be purified by remembering the Supreme Lord. There are also distinctions of purity and impurity regarding the performers of activities. When a mantra is received from the lips of a bona fide spiritual master, it is considered pure, and all work as well as all objects are considered purified by being offered to the Supreme Lord. For the execution of religious principles, these 6 factors must be considered in terms of purity and impurity. Ultimately, there is no fixed standard by which to make distinctions of virtue and fault, because they transform according to the place, time, beneficiary, and so on. In regard to the execution of prescribed duties for sense gratification, the actual intent of all the scriptures is the subduing of materialistic propensities. This is the actual principle of religion, because only this destroys sorrow, confusion, and fear, and bestows all good fortune. Work performed for sense gratification is not actually beneficial. The descriptions of such fruitive benefits described in the sections of the Vedic literature known as Falashruti are actually meant to help one gradually cultivate a taste for the higher benefit. Unfortunately, those possessing inferior intelligence take the flowery benedictory verses of the scriptures to be the actual purport of the Vedas. However, this opinion is never upheld by those who factually know the truth of the Vedas. Those whose minds are agitated by the flowery words of the Vedas have no attraction for hearing discussions of Lord Hari. It should be understood that there is no inner purport to the Vedas apart from the original personality of Godhead. The Vedas focus exclusively upon the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, because this material world is simply the illusory energy of the Supreme Lord. The Vedic literature always recommends that one become aloof from material association by becoming attached to the absolute truth. So, in other words, in the Karam Kand also, when we hear that after doing this, we will get this benefit, those are only elementary practices. Ultimately, all of it is staying away from the materialism and moving towards the Godhead. Okay, so this is what he's talking about. So let's see in detail what these verses in this chapter are saying to. So Lord Krishna is talking. So that's why it says Shri Bhagwan Uvach. Ya etan mat patho hitva bhakti gyan kriye atmakan kshudan kamansh chalai praner jushantaha sansranite. The Supreme Lord said, those who will not follow the paths of devotional service, speculative knowledge, and fruitive activities as prescribed by me, and simply work to fulfill their insignificant material desires, will certainly continue in the cycle of repeated birth and death. So it's like a Karam Kand will never let us get out of this cycle of birth and death. If we are doing it just to gain something in this material world. So like a dhan prapti, putra prapti, or even name and fame, that will all bind us. Here, Lord Krishna condemns those who simply work hard for achieving sense gratification without any care for spiritual advancement. Devotional service places one directly under the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whereas the cultivation of speculative knowledge leads one to the impersonal Brahm conception of the absolute truth. By executing one's duties without attachment to the results, one also becomes detached from fruitive desires. In contrast, those who work hard in the hopes of ruling a kingdom or enjoying celestial delights will certainly continue on the path of material existence. Those who renounce the paths of performing fruitive activities without attachment, cultivating transcendental knowledge and devotional service are certainly uncontrolled and thus take pleasure in gratifying their insignificant desires for sense gratification. Unalloyed devotional service is certainly superior to devotional service mixed with karma and devotional service mixed with jnana. Where there's no tinge of devotional service, there is only desire for sense gratification or the desire for renouncing sense gratification. Those whose aim is either material enjoyment or impersonal liberation cannot gain ultimate freedom from the cycle of repeated birth and death. Verse number 2. Swe swe dhikareya nishta saguna parikirtita viprayas tu dosha syad ubyor esh nishchaya. To remain fixed in one's position is known as piety or a good quality. And to deviate from one's position is known as impiety or a fault. This is how piety and impiety should be asserted. Shri Uddhava said, "My dear Lord, I had asked you how one can determine good qualities and faults. You had replied by saying that to find fault with your devotee was itself a fault. But what if a devotee appears to be faithfully engaged in your service, but somehow or other comes under the influence of karmis or jnanis and thus deviates from his engagement in pure bhakti? Is it a mistake to find fault in such a devotee? What about a person who is a neophyte in spiritual life, but after coming in contact with a pure devotee, decides to imitate such an exalted soul? If one prematurely gives up his occupational duties, thinking that he is situated on the liberated platform, although he is still in the bodily conception of life, isn't that also to be considered as faulty? In reply to this inquiry of Uddhava, the Lord said, the characteristics of faults and piety can be understood in this way. To remain fixed in one's natural position is always to be considered a good quality. In Bhagavad Gita, he used the word swadharma. To remain fixed in one's natural position is always to be considered a good quality. Occasionally, neophyte devotee may become polluted by the association of those engaged in fruitive activities and mental speculation, so that he becomes affected by mundane tendencies. Similarly, an ordinary person who observes the exalted status of a pure devotee sometimes externally imitates his activities, considering himself to be on the same exalted platform of pure devotional service. These imperfect practitioners of Bhakti Yoga are not exempt from criticism because their fruitive activities, mental speculation, and false prestige are material intrusions in the pure loving service of the Lord. So that means their intentions are colored. A pure devotee engaged exclusively in the Lord's service should not be criticized, but a devotee whose devotional service is mixed with material qualities may be corrected so that he can rise to the platform of pure devotional service. So in other words, when a guru criticizes or guru puts us on the right path, he's doing it for our benefit. Okay? One's faithfulness to his particular status is to be considered one's good quality. If due to restlessness one tries to imitate the position of another, that is to be understood as a fault. Different processes of self-realization exist because of people are at various stages of development. When one who is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord exhibits a spirit of enjoyment or a propensity for dry renunciation, his position is faulty. When one accepts a position that is favorable for his advancement in life, that is to be considered a good quality. Whereas when one accepts a position that is unfavorable for his advancement, that is a fault. So we got to see our whatever sadhana we are doing, where is it taking us? It is bringing us down, or is it taking us up? Okay, that's how it gets decided. Verse number 3. Shuddhye ashuddhi vidhyetehe samaneshu api vastushu dravasye vichikitsartham gun dosho shubha ashubho dharmartham vyavhartham yatrartham iti cha anag. O sinless Uddhava, to understand what is proper in life, one must evaluate everything, such as religious principles and considerations of economic development in terms of its purity and impurity. Even in ordinary dealings, one must be able to distinguish between good and bad. As a matter of survival, one must be able to distinguish between that which is auspicious and that which is inauspicious. See, all of this is done by our buddhi, the discriminative faculty. Here the Lord is further describing the necessity for considering qualities and faults. Uddhava has presented his doubt, and the Lord will remove it. Every doubt can be removed by good instruction, just as mosquitoes can be removed by smoke. Every material object has its good qualities or faults. For example, the bastak spinach is considered pure, whereas kalmi spinach is considered impure. In this way, the faults and the good qualities, or the piety and impiety, must be considered in all aspects of practical life. The same principles also applies to religion, as well as all kinds of ordinary dealings. Even though one who is well situated in terms of good behavior comes from a lower class family, he should be considered a superior person due to his possessing good qualities. There are also auspicious and inauspicious times to be considered while beginning a journey. Although accepting charity from an inappropriate person is a fault, in an emergency or to save one's life, one may accept whatever is required. Whether in ordinary dealings, religious practices, or basic survival, one cannot avoid making a distinction between good and bad. Religious principles must be followed by the upkeep of society, and for this purpose, there must be a correct ascertainment of what is piety and what is sin, what is pure and what is impure. It is practically seen that everyone makes such distinctions with regards to food, residence, associates, and so on. Just to ensure one's survival, one must distinguish between that which is healthy and that which is injurious, that which will be profitable and that which will result in disaster. Thus, it is to be concluded that even a wise man must distinguish between that which is favorable and that which is unfavorable in this material world, while at the same time understanding the transcendental position above the dualities of material existence. Okay? So, as we say that this buddhi has been given to us to discriminate, to know the difference between right and wrong, between the truth and untruth. We got to use it for our own benefit, while keeping the ultimate goal in life. Verse number 4. Darshitaho ayam maya acharoho dharmam udratam dhuram. So this verse has only one line. I have revealed these methods for making distinctions for those who hear the burden of maintaining mundane religious principles. Materialistic persons who are attached to enjoying the results of their activities must constantly consider the purity and impurity, vice and virtue, and good qualities and faults of all their actions. Transcendentalists are not confined to such material conceptions, however. So that means the person who has already risen above the duality, they don't need to. Because often we see that Guru doing something, we think we can do it too. Guru has crossed this Maya. So that's why it's often said that don't do what Guru does, do what Guru says. Because Guru is teaching us at our level, so we got to follow those instructions properly. In this regard, one should discuss these two verses from the Chaitanya Charit Amrita. All kinds of activities, both auspicious and inauspicious, that are detrimental to the discharge of transcendental loving service to Lord Shri Krishna are actions of the darkness of ignorance. In the material world, conceptions of good and bad are all mental speculations. Therefore, saying this is good and this is bad is all a mistake. So, in other words, it's like a relative. For one person, it could be good. For the other person, it could be bad. So, we got to look at it for our progress. What is taking us there? Verse number 5. Bhumye ambav agne anilakasha bhutanam panch dhatvaha abram sathavar dinanam sharira atmasanyuta. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether are the five gross elements emanating from the Supreme Lord that make up the bodies of all conditioned souls, from Lord Brahma down to the most insignificant blade of grass. So everything manifested has these panch tattva. Okay. The varieties of good qualities and faults are understood from the authority of the Vedic literature. The Vedic literature makes such distinctions to help the conditioned souls on their gradual march towards progress in spiritual life. Earth, water, fire, air, and sky are the five material elements. These are the primary ingredients of the gross material bodies of all living entities up to the standard of Brahma. Okay, so even the Brahma, that's why when we look at Lord Krishna's body, Lord Ram's body, those are the bodies taken by the Vishnu. But when we talk about Lord Shiva, talking to his consort Parvati in the bodily form, that is a manifested form. Manifested. Okay, from Brahma down to the blade of grass. Verse number 6. Veden naam rupani vishmani sameshvapi dhatushva kalpyantah etesham swarth siddhye. My dear Uddhava, although all material bodies are constituted of these same five elements, different names are given so that one can distinguish between them and thus advance toward life's ultimate goal. So according to the form, the names have been given. Okay. Not only that, as human beings, we have even come up with so many languages. Same form in different language, called differently. Okay. But essentially, all the forms are made out of five elements. The forms are different based upon how much fire, how much air, how much earth element. But what is consistently the same everywhere, that is Brahman. Although the bodies of all conditioned souls are made of the same 5 gross material elements, they are designated by various names and forms. The Vedic literature takes into account such varieties and classifies human society in terms of Varna and Ashram. Thus, someone is Brahman, someone else is Brahmachari, another person is a betel nut merchant, and still another is an oil merchant. One may question, what is the need for such diversity? The answer is that the Vedic system is designed by the Lord so that conditioned souls may pursue their individual achievements and at the same time advance toward the ultimate goal of life, Krishna consciousness. So we can move towards that absolute based upon our own sanskars. Because why somebody is a Brahman and somebody is a Vaishya? So those merchants, those are like a business people. And even any society we see these, not only in India, not only among Hindus, everywhere, no matter where we go. Okay, so this stays the same. And goal is also the same for everybody, whether we know it or not. Verse number 7. Desh kaladi bhavanam vastu nam mam satam gun doshau vidhiyete niyamartham hi karmanam. O foremost of devotees, in order to regulate the activities of the living entities, I have imparted the understanding of that which is good and that which is bad in relation to time, place, and objects. Desh, Kal, Adi, Bhavnanam, Vastunam, Mam Satam. In the previous verse, the Lord explained why the Vedic literature assigns different positions to the various bodies of the living entities. In this verse, the Lord explains the Vedic evaluation regarding the entities that interact with the various classes of material bodies. The purpose of the Vedic literature is to restrict the sinful propensities of human beings by establishing proper behavior for all classes of men and defining what is improper with regards to time, place, and the objects of this world. So Vedas are actually instruction books. But we are not familiar with those, with that language also, and we find them so complicated and so massive also. So that's why, hey, let's go to Bhagavad Gita. That is also a textbook. Go to Yoga Sutras. That's a textbook. So there are simpler textbooks for us also. But the idea is to show us what is wrong and don't do that, and what is right, do that in order to achieve our goal. It's almost like if somebody has some kind of a sickness, and then doctor says, don't eat that food. That will make you more sick. But then the doctor will also tell you what to eat. Okay, so the same thing is in Vedas. What should we do and what should we not do in order to accomplish our ultimate goal? A conditioned soul. And what is in Sanskrit we call conditioned soul? Jivatma. Okay, Jivatma. Atma is a pure soul, is called Atma. But right now, what has been encased by these 3 layers of bodies is a Jivatma. Jivatma, conditioned soul. A conditioned soul falsely identifies with the gross body. That's why we think that we are the body. Not only the body, we think, oh, we are a female body or that many years old body. We just even go down there. So a conditioned soul falsely identifies with a gross body and thus considers anything that gives immediate satisfaction to the body to be good and anything inconvenient or disturbing for the body to be bad. By higher intelligence, however, one can recognize one's long-term self-interest and dangers. By designating and restricting the exploitation of the material world, Vedic knowledge gradually brings a conditioned soul to the platform of material goodness. And material goodness is what? The Satvikta. So with our own efforts, we got to move towards the Satvikta. At that stage, one becomes eligible to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Predominantly tamasic and a rajasic person not ready to serve actually. When they fool themselves or fool others to serve, what do? They bring the problems. Okay, so sattvic person. That's why what the Brahmins are considered predominantly sattvic, pure. Verse number 8. कृशंसारो देशानाम अब्रह्मण्यो सुचिर भवेत कृशंसारो अपि असौवीर की यंसम सक्रितेरिनम. Those places where there are no spotted deer, where respect is not given to the Brahmins, where general cleanliness and the purificatory rites of Vedic society are neglected, where meat eaters predominate, and where the earth is barren, such as Kikat are to be considered as contaminated. In these 8 verses, Shri Krishna describes the purity and impurity of objects, places, and times. The word Krishansar means spotted deer. Among countries, those where there is no spotted deer are considered to be impure. Besides this, any country where the inhabitants do not show respect to the Brahman is considered most impure. So spotted deer means people have over there, inhabitants killed those deer. So there's no deer. So of course, that's an impure place. Countries where the people are uncivilized are so severe, which are inhabited by malicious, and where food grains do not grow because the land is barren, are considered impure. And the Kikat refers to the province of Gaya. While living at the Gurukul, brahmacharis dress in the hide of a spotted deer. It is required to wear this during the period of learning about sacrifice. The skin of the black or spotted antelope is also used as a garment by those receiving instructions in the execution of Vedic sacrifice. Therefore, since a sacrifice cannot be properly performed in areas bereft of such creatures, these places are considered impure. Even if people are advanced in terms of pious activities and the performance of sacrifice, their country is considered to be impure if they are averse to the devotional service to the Supreme Lord. When there was no respect for devotional service to Lord Hari in countries such as Ang, Bihar, and Bang, Bengal, they were counted as impure. However, after the appearance of great Vaishnavas such as Shri Jayadev Goswami, they have been glorified by the scriptures for their purity, even though they were also considered impure because of not having spotted tail. Okay, so it's not that the impure places will always stay impure. With proper teaching, with the help of the gurus, those places do get purified also. Okay, so let's do one more verse. Verse number 9. कर्मण्यो गुणवान कालो द्रव्यता स्वत एव वा यतो निर्वतते कर्म स दोषो कर्म का समृता. A time is considered to be auspicious when it facilitates the execution of one's prescribed duties. And that time which obstructs the execution of one's prescribed duties is considered inauspicious. Now, the purity and impurity of various times is being explained. Any time that is suitable for executing one's prescribed duty is considered to be pure. The time where one obtains the ingredients necessary for performing one's work is considered pure by nature. The most auspicious time for performing karma yoga is before noon. When a woman gives birth to a child, she is considered to be impure because that's not the right time. She needs rest. Body has gone through so much. And in the morning time, body is ready. It has rested all night. It is ready to exert. As there is consideration of purity and impurity with regards to place, there is also consideration of purity and impurity with regards to time. The time when one obtains the ingredients for performing one's occupational duty and the time which is spent performing pious activities are naturally auspicious. Any time or condition that impedes the performance of one's occupational or religious duty must be considered as most inauspicious. The most auspicious of all times is the moment one achieves the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one neglects the loving service of the Lord, being carried away by sense gratification, he is certainly living in most inauspicious times. Therefore, that moment in which one achieves the association of the Supreme Lord or the Lord's pure devotee is the most auspicious time, whereas the moment of losing such association is most inauspicious. We'll start next week with verse number 10. So let's do the Shanti part. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.